The recording. Hello, guys. Guys on online, can you guys hear us? Am I facing the screen?
Can now.
Yes, great. Thank you, Cheryl. We were waiting for a few more ladies to join us here in the showroom, but I guess they're somewhere joining us shortly. So we'll get started because we know all of you online are ready for us to start. So, hello everyone. Firstly, thank you guys for taking time and coming in and joining us here. This is lovely, right? To be in person. Uh, as Gemma said, slowly starting to meet people again. So thank you for coming in, and thank you guys for all of you who are joining us online. Um, Before we start the topic and the discussion today, a quick thank you to Rishi, who's hiding away, not on the screen, from KI. There he is. Hi, Rishi. We just see your I've never had this before. Sorry, we've got a few more people come in. So please join in. Please join in. And thank you, Susie, for always supporting. Thank you, KI, for hosting us in your beautiful space. And thank you for the speakers who are taking time out today, Julie from HOK and Sarah from Arcadis. Thank you for joining us. Before we get into the discussion, I'll do a quick presentation about WOD. I know few of you are already members and know about us, but I'll just do a quick presentation if I can share my screen. I'm guessing everyone can see it. Julie, if you just nod, if you can see it, great. Um, right, so hi, I'm Harsha Kotak. I am the founder of WOD Women in Office Design. We started WOD in 2018 with a personal agenda of just meeting other women, meeting other colleagues, peers from the industry. I've worked as a designer in this industry for 20 plus years now, and had built my network in US, India, UK, and I just wanted to bring everyone together on a platform. And that's how it started on LinkedIn, where I connected people like Susie and Nada and a few friends, and we were just about 10, 15 of us. Um, the whole purpose is to come together and learn and network together, right? As a designer, I felt at one point very cubed in into my 9 to 5. I would go out and meet clients, I would go out and meet suppliers, but I never went out and met other designers. I wanted to see what others are doing, right? Also, companies like KI, companies like HOK, they do a lot of research into what we are doing in our everyday design work, right? That research, the findings hardly ever reach to us or us other designers from other companies. And that's why I wanted to set up this platform also for sharing that knowledge with each and every one, right? So that's how it started as a very personal agenda. Moved on 2 years down, we are about 2,000 plus members. Don't ask me how it happened, it just happened. We've got chapters in Europe, UK, and now in India, starting one in September in Milan. So something's gone right. Something's been done right, right? People love to come in. People love to just come and meet each other. Some people come in to network, to build their contacts. Some come to just learn and listen to experts about what we're talking. So everyone takes what they like. But basic agenda is to just meet, learn, network, and to remind everyone, it's not a feminist group. So I get these emails every other day. Are men allowed? We love men. Please, we want them in. Rishi, so you're welcome here. So yeah, it's just about coming together and learning. So we many a times have speakers who are men, and all our events are attended by men. But at the same time, it is a platform for women to shout and scream about their work, and give them a platform to showcase what they are. So that's where we are. Done really well for last 2.5 years. Before lockdown, most of our learning and networking happened through our live events. That was mainly hosted by all the manufacturers around in UK and other countries. And got really good response. We've hosted our events at many festivals like Clerkenwell Design Week, London Festival of Architecture, Design Museum of Barcelona, Volunteer Fair, Bangalore Fair. So we've done a lot of those as well now in last 2.5 years because people love it and we've got a great response. Come lockdown, and of course we had to, like everyone else, move on to digital events. So last 1 year we've done about 30, 35 digital hybrid events, and again, basically curating some really good topics, just like we're doing today. But then came a time last July when I realized that, of course, we can't meet, and these events happen once every 2 months. How else can we do more interactive learning? And that's when I set up what is called as WOD Digital, an app-based platform for us. It's free for designers to join. Basically helps us again interact with each other. So if you are doing a project in Barcelona and if you want to meet some designers there and know what's going on, come to the digital platform and you get to meet other designers from Spain or whatever country. There are people from Canada, from Australia, from India, from China, Singapore. So it's a good network to be on. Again, we do a lot of academic courses on digital, so a good place to come and learn, raise your profile because we do a lot of interviews. So yes, that's about WOD Digital. If you're not a member already, go to our website and join us. It's free, as I said, for designers and architects to come and join. So that's about us. Moving on to our topic today, designing a neurodiverse and inclusive workspace, right? Now, we've done this topic before, where HOK have done a lot of research on this topic. So we've had Kay Sargent speak at our events, and we've shared a lot of research knowledge on this topic. But I wanted to take it a bit further, a step further, and talk about um, how, as designers, we use this knowledge in real life. How do we actually take this knowledge and educate our clients and really bring it into our projects? And that's where um, today's agenda was set up, wherein Julie from HOK, who's here with us online, she's going to present a brief about this topic based on their research. And then Sarah here is going to talk to us about a product that helps in inclusive design. And Sarah worked with the team at KI in designing this product. So she's going to talk to us about that real life project. And then we would move on to a discussion amongst us all about how we design an inclusive space, right? So that's that. Julie, are you ready to share your screen?
Yes, I am indeed. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Really excited to be with you all today, although I'm only with you virtually, but hopefully in the future we have a chance to meet in person as well. So let me share my screen and then we can get started. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. And if people virtually joining us could play themselves on mute, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. Great. So what a great topic for discussion today. I've been involved in some part of the research HOK has done on the neurodiversity and inclusive design, and I'm really thrilled to share more of this with you all today. In terms of today's, there were two really important questions. First of all, want to share a bit more with you about what is neurodiversity. This is something very topical. A lot of people talk about it, but actually what does it mean? But also what does it mean for businesses and why it is so important to consider this population when designing spaces. And secondly, which is something everyone in the room and online is very interested in today, and we'll discuss more as we go, is how we can design environments that are more inclusive. How can we create the spaces that feel welcoming and engaging and inspiring, and it can support everyone. So what is neurodiversity and what does it mean for businesses? So first of all, it's important to recognize that neurodiversity is an umbrella term. So obviously, this is covering a number of conditions. And it's very important here to see the two highlighted words, which are neurodevelopmental and lifelong conditions. This is very different from mental health issues where these issues can just go. When you have these neurodiverse conditions, this is typically something you will be born with and they don't go away. So you will find strategies to cope with them. You will find what works best for you, but these conditions are part of who you are and that part of your DNA. So just a number of them have been listing on the screen, but obviously there are more than that. And I really encourage everyone interested in this topic to look at the Neurodiversity Association. We had a lot of information around the different type of conditions, but also the different type of symptoms and some of the characteristics that are linked to these. But it's very important also to recognize that people can have more than one condition, and also that people can have the same conditions, but they will vary a lot from one person to another. So meaning if you say to someone, oh, you are dyslexic, you can have another dyslexic person. It doesn't mean they will be affected in the same way or have the same kind of factors. So just to take a moment, just looking at the screen and think about you, think about people you know, and either anything in this list you can think of, or actually, I do struggle with this sometimes myself, or I know some of my colleagues who find it quite challenging being in the workplace environment. It's very important to recognize that a lot of these might be things people don't necessarily talk about. It's not necessarily something visible. It's not something people will disclose easily. And most importantly, it's very important to acknowledge that a lot of people might not even be aware they have some of these conditions. So from the research we undertook, it turns out 1 in 8 people are considered neurodiverse and having this brain wired differently, but only fewer than 50% know it. So again, there is a lot of increased diagnosis, healthcare, medicine is being really advanced, and more than ever, we can really understand better these conditions. But a lot of people might not be aware they have one of these conditions and not necessarily find the right strategies to cope with these as well. So just to give a few indication around some of the challenges people who are neurodiverse can meet. First of all, there could be some effect on productivity. If they are not in the right environment, they might find it really challenging to execute some tasks. It doesn't mean they can't do them, but the environment might not be supporting them in the right way so they can be successful. But also it's really important to realize that people who are from the neurodiverse population might have more challenges which could link to mental health issues, and depression could be really high for these people as well. So understanding these conditions and creating spaces that could be accommodating these can really help also in mental health and well-being aspects. But also a lot of people might not know, but unemployment is also a challenge. A lot of these people are not necessarily finding the right type of jobs or not finding the companies that can welcome them and accommodate them. And that's really sad to hear that there is such a high level of unemployment for these people. But most importantly, it's really important to understand and acknowledge that neurodiversity is also meaning you can have extraordinary talents brought to your workplace. It's very, very important that people who are neurodiverse can be bringing something different, something that you might not have in your teams already. And having spaces to support them will also encourage creativity, productivity, creative storytelling. Empathy is also a key characteristic for people who are neurodiverse. Capacity for invention, innovation, which is something more and more organizations are looking for. And the level of productivity and being able to thrive under pressure is also something that can be really beneficial to a company. So as we like to call them, these are superpowers. This is not conditions meaning you have a disability in the sense that it's a negative thing. It should be really seen as something extra, something that could be leveraged and could be supported and welcomed better. So here is a quote which I really like, which is from an autistic student we have surveyed during the research phase, but just to read it out loud for all you all and take some time to think about it. We are freshwater fish in salt water. Put us in fresh water and we function just fine. put us in salt water and we struggle to survive. This is a great analogy in terms of how people from the neurodiverse spectrum can feel in a workplace environment or an environment in general, which is not accommodating them or not supporting them. This is exactly how these people feel. If you put them in the right environment, they could be absolutely fine. And most importantly, they can be excelling in some of the tasks they have to undertake and be really flourishing. So how can we design environments to be inclusive, or to be more inclusive, should I say? So first of all, when we talk about the neurodiverse population, we talk about neurodivergence as well. This is something different from what we call neurotypical. So neurotypical are basically people who don't have these neurodiverse conditions. And then you have the different end of the spectrum. So you have the hypersensitive part of the spectrum. This is all about the people that really dislike the environments where it could be too stimulated, it could be too distracting. So there are some strategies here to accommodate this, and we will talk about this a bit further. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have what we call the hyposensitive, which is the opposite in the sense that they prefer to be overstimulated. They need stimulation to be creative, to be productive, to feel good as well. So looking into this, it's also important to see that there could be some challenges eye designers that needs to be taken into account. So let's take an example. If you put yourself in the shoes of someone who has a condition, which means could be affected by sound and noise, how can you, as a designer, create a space that would bring some solution for that person to be feeling more comfortable and more in a space that is adapted? So there will be strategies around acoustic treatment, there will be creating separation in spaces, different type of materials you can choose. So all of these senses are important in design and need to be taken into account, either to create an experience, but also thinking about the challenges they could create when they could be too stimulating or distracting. Thinking about visuals, so you can talk about bright lights, you can talk about patterns, but also olfactory senses. So everything around smells can be stimulating for some, but it can be really distracting for others, even hindering their productivity and their well-being. So this is something really to bear in mind when designing spaces. So in terms of the space types, it's important to consider the different type of activities that need to be supported in the workplace environment. So we have on the screen here 6 of them, which I will run through with you in more detail. But what we try to understand is how to create these spaces to both accommodate people who are more on the hypersensitive part of the spectrum and those are more on the hyposensitive part of the spectrum. So if we look at this first type of space, which is the one around concentration and focus, everything where you require some individual work and being focused, do some analytical reasoning, you could have different type of spaces to support the same activity. And ideally, what you want to provide is within the same space, having spaces to support both the hypersensitive and hyposensitive folks. So just looking at this one, for example, you've got for hypersensitive, people who need to focus will have a tendency to really gravitate towards enclosed spaces. Spaces are kind of isolated from the rest of the open plan environment, something where they could feel a bit more separate or secluded, even like a space where they feel like it's shielding and it's a kind of protection from the outside world. But for people who are more hypersensitive, they are quite happy to be in a stimulating environment, in a kind of either corridor or where there could be some people walking around, but they can still focus and do this individual work, even if they have people around them. So that's kind of two part of the spectrum. And similarly for the other spaces, everyday task, that's the same. You can either be in an open plan environment on a bench of desk and really be able to do your everyday task without any distraction and feeling comfortable. But for other people, they will need more these kind of spaces where they could be more by themselves and not having too much distraction around them. Creative spaces are really important, and we want to encourage creative thinking and brainstorming, which is all leading to innovation and ideation. And similarly, you will have people who will feel more comfortable in a space which is a bit more enclosed, maybe less exposed to others, maybe with more privacy than having a space in the open environment. But for others, they would quite enjoy and be stimulated and feeling more creative when they will have people around looking at them, asking questions, and not feeling too separate. Congregate and meeting is really important, especially now we're talking about returning to the office, something people have found really challenging in a virtual setup. For some people, they will need different type of spaces to support whether it is informal meeting or formal meeting. And we really want to create spaces that can encourage both the ad hoc chats, but also the kind of formal collaboration, which we all know happen in the office environment. Contemplated refresh is something really important as well. You need to re-energize, you need to be mindful, you need to have some space to just have a break and relax. Obviously, you can go outside as well, but when you are in the workplace environment, you will find different type of spaces can be supporting these requirements you may have during your day. And convivial and social, again, after all the experience of working from home and being in a virtual environment, being all together when it will be possible to do so and safe to do so in the same space, you will have different spaces that can be considered to encourage social interaction and activities that can happen in the workplace environment. But again, being really different in terms of kind of offering, sitting style, but also the environment itself. So two things really important. It's really important to create variety, and that's something you all are familiar with, I'm sure. Creating ecosystem of spaces is also really important with micro environments where you can also have some kind of level of choice and control on the environment when possible, really to make you feel like you are empowered to decide what is suiting best the activities you have to undertake, whether you are neurodiverse or neurotypical alike. But also other type of things that needs to be considered when designing everything around the colors, the level of lighting, the materials, the patterns, the elements that will be creating the experience. That's also really important, but that needs to be all designed with purpose and intent. There is a lot of things around biophilic design, for example, and a lot of people say it's just about bringing plants. For example, that's not the case. It has to be really thoughtful in the design, and the intent needs to be really clear so people understand which spaces are most suitable for them. So this one is showing a bit more a wider plan where you've got this kind of variety of space type and functionality which is represented, and more than happy for you all to have access to the document so you can have a closer look at these type of environments in more detail. So as we said before, not only there is a variety of space types to consider, but there are also elements in the design that needs to be thought through. Thinking of the color, as you well know, the impact of color is really important. So pop-off color will be really good if you want to have a space for people to feel re-energized and creative and having something really fresh for the eye. But if you are a bit more from the hypersensitive part of the spectrum, you will feel more comfortable in an environment which is more with calming colors, more neutral colors, something where you will less feel distracted. And the same with patterns. Patterns can be really destructive if you are from the hypersensitive part of the spectrum. So you have to be really careful how you use patterns within the space and think about strategically where they could be applied. Access to daylight, important for everyone, but the level of light is something it's good for people to have some level of control on, but also the kind of focus areas, as we said before, you can have different type of space to support the same needs for activities. And also encouraging people to have some spaces where they can just be collaborating and creating in different setup is something that will really support the different people in the workplace. And of course, as we said before, returning to the office is in everyone's top of mind. Many of us have already returned, and there are a lot of things changing due to COVID and the pandemic we've all been through. The world and work will change going forward. This is undeniable. And more than ever, not only we need to create spaces to accommodate neurodiverse population and make everyone feel welcome and safe, but also acknowledging that now, after the pandemic and the experience, everyone has a heightened sensitivity to their surroundings. So what we are designing needs to be helping the neurodiverse population, but also all the other individuals alike. It's not designing for neurodiverse population, it's designing for everyone to feel safe and welcome. So there is a compelling case, human case and business case to be made. And obviously, mindfulness and health and safety are really important, the well-being of all the people using the space, but the inclusivity is also really important. So if you'd like to find out more about our research, we've done extensive research over the past years. So we've got all of our reports available to download on our website under HOK publications. We also have a number of articles. The latest one have been specifically for healthcare pediatric design, where neurodiversity has been also looked into. So really important and interesting topic. And we also have a video, which is kind of a sum up of most of the research undertaken and the key elements from the design perspective. So happy for you to have a look at this. And obviously, I'm more than happy to take any question you will have after the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. That was lovely. I already have a few questions, but I think we're going to go to Sarah's presentation, look at that, and then move on to a proper discussion on both of the presentations. So, Sarah, do you want to? Okay, I'll share the screen for you.
Thank you.
Because it's quite interlinked, isn't it? What you're going to talk?
Yeah. So I think Julie has laid that presentation was fantastic. I thought, but
Yeah.
I think what Julie was talking about there was applied in this project that I wanted to talk through about how we a client came to us with an issue, a problem, and we had to design a space. The product of which you are actually sitting in now. So this the colonnade is what came out of it. Although this has been pushed on a lot from when I was involved with the project, but it's also around, I think, collaborative working in the way that we think. So if you just go into the next slide. Sorry, I'm going to have to do that.
That's what I'm here.
So I also have a quote in my presentation, and it's always nice to start with one. And this one is, we use it in our design thinking workshops. It's just around how, as designers, we're very reactive to human-centric design and human challenges and changes with human culture, and especially when we're designing spaces. And I feel that we have to be we have to react to how things change. I mean, this last year is a great example. We're coming back into the office, and I don't think any one of us can actually say for sure we know what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Everybody is different. Everybody is coping with the pandemic differently. Everybody's coping with the return to work differently. And as such, we need to be aware of that as designers, and we need to try and design for everybody. And that's really hard, and that can be really difficult to do. So linking in with that neurodiverse, what Julie was talking about, it's absolutely the right thing. And those facts were very interesting when Julie, you said about 50% of people don't know that they're on that spectrum. So I think when we were all forced home, and I don't know about everyone else, but I found it quite difficult to concentrate because the TV is right there and the fridge is right there, and it's just, there's so many distractions, and I had to really rethink the space that I was going to work in going forward. Otherwise, I would have got nothing done. So if you click onto the next one. So approaching a client problem, the normal way that my design team normally approach would be, we take the client needs, the client requirements, or that's a sort of a product that they need or a project, and we kind of take that away as a design team, and we work with it and we work through it, and we come up with a solution, and then we come back to the suppliers or manufacturers and we say, we need these products, we need this area, we need this this sort of chairs, these tables. The way that we approached this specific problem was that we actually came to KI straight away, and we said, we need this thing. We don't know quite how to get there. We haven't seen a product on the market. Can you help us get there? Are you interested? So we kind of formed a little collaboration team, and we were here a lot, annoying the guys a lot. But yeah, that's how we sort of approached the project, I guess. And if you just click onto the next screen, sorry. This is what the client asked us to do. So they wanted an adaptable space that had sort of walls, but they didn't want actual walls, and they wanted it to be cost effective, and they wanted it to be access to power. They wanted to have control of the space, so they wanted it to have no walls, but they also wanted to control the space, that what was happening there. And they have a huge sort of focus on accessibility and inclusivity, and within that's just something that they've been focused on for years. So I know that a lot of people are really focused on that now, but this client specifically was so. So we got that given to us, and we were like, okay, that's an interesting quote. Let's see what we can do. So the first thing we did was, okay, what's the control about city push? The next one. What's this sort of, why do they need the walls? Like, what's this space division that they need? And basically the idea was that they're very big on risk-averse design and accessibility. So their circulation routes had to be kept clear. They wanted space around things to be very accessible. They didn't want to have to people to feel they had to squeeze past things. They didn't want to pack out the floors, but they also wanted a space that could be flexible and adaptable. So the problem there is they were worried that if they didn't have a wall type thing sort of surrounding the area, it would just become a mess of chairs and tables and sort of whiteboards and pinboards everywhere. And they thought that would become hectic for some people. It would become, it would distract people. They wanted to make sure they were keeping the right environment, so people could choose where they work and choose what environments they work in. So we started with the idea of a rail around the circulation spaces, hanging whiteboards off to try and keep those circulation spaces clear. And sort of we talked about that. And then if you ping to the next one. And then from that, we went into this idea of sort of what other spaces that we could, that the whiteboards could then, so we could take those whiteboards off the rails and we could hang them on the walls, or we could hang them on these sort of like tripod style things. And then we started looking at chairs and tables and ancillary products that could then make those spaces collaborative or in a presentation style. And then what was really great about working directly with the KI team is like our team was able to challenge things like the materiality. So we spent a lot of time talking about how light things were to pick up. Like if you did have a mobility issue, could you still pick up the product? How awkward would that be for you? What about people with visual impairments or hearing impairments? How can we help that? So that's when we started talking about curtains that you could pull across or acoustic screens that you could try and make the space more, I guess, inclusive for everybody. But also we were really keen not to have separate products for different mobility and accessibility issues. We wanted just one product to be for everybody. So we started talking with the care team about sit-stand meeting tables and bringing those in. You see just peeking out of there the little tables there, which are on the right hand side there, sorry for those online, and those are a meter and 1.1 meter wide, the spaces in between, and again that was designed so wheelchair access would not be an issue, and there would be no sort of armrests banging on the underside of the table. So all that kind of thing we went through, and we really started to like pull apart and work with the team. Go to the next one. So then it evolved again from just a rail to, okay, let's move this away from just the circulation routes. Let's see if we can move it into the floor plates. And we created this frame. And I will say now that the KI team were very much taking a hold of this now, and we were just sort of dropping in and giving feedback. But this was very much a part to give power to the space. So obviously we live in such an agile world now. Even before the pandemic, we were all on laptops, or all, you come and present to a client, you want to be able to plug your laptop in. There's nothing worse than it dying. So we really wanted to give power, but we wanted to be safe. So we didn't want people plugging into floors, which I realize we've done here. So that's our new issue, which is a true hazard. But so we wanted to try and do it, but again, not have it too high or too low, and a nice, what was the best height to have that. And then we started to think about other fun things that we could put in. So like plant life, or, could we incorporate storage into it? Could we start to really save space? And that's a really great thing that we went down that route, because now, from COVID, people are starting to think, how much office space do I need? Can I reduce it? Is hybrid working going to make, give some floor space back? And as such, our spaces need to now work 3 times as harder as they did before. So a space that can be completely adaptable, that can be a meeting room, a collaboration space, a presentation area, and somewhere to sit and have a cup of tea with your boss, you know, a space that can be all of those things is really important right now. And I think what the client asked for, that was what they were asking for. We didn't quite know it back then. We had to go through that process. We click on to the next one. So then we had this this framework, and then we started to really drill into each specific piece. So the easels that you see hanging up there and on the screen became very very light, and I mean the team have now put magnets on them, so they're very easy to use. You can see the little lemon tables, which are the flipped up inclusive ones. Everything's light, everything's easy to use, and everything is totally adaptable. So you can create a space that's right for your team. And the idea is that you can do it yourself. You don't need an FM to come and move it for you. You know, you as an employee of whichever organization can set that up for you yourself. And if you're needing a quiet space to work, or you need somewhere to collaborate with your team, or you want it to be a bit more brighter, or you want to be a bit more darker, you can pull the curtains or whatever you need to do. The idea that it's supposed to be able to do all of that, which I think, Julie, again goes back to your point about having that those choices and being able to have those different spaces that you can then choose what's best for the job that you need to do. Sorry. Oh, that's not good. I think it's so this is the space, the product when I sort of left off the project, and the KI team then ran with it. If you click onto the next one, this is now what it looks like. So it's a lot more developed and moved on, and I think it's a fantastic product, but it's also about the space it's creating. And it's strange that just a simple frame can create that kind of environment that we feel, okay, this is now somewhere I can be creative in, or I can be quiet in, or I can be that's your teams. Sorry, I'm just going to click off it. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, and I just wanted to share that with you as a live example of how all of those sort of neurodiversity and inclusivity and accessibility came into a project.
Great. Oh, thank you, Sarah. That was interesting, because I've seen the product before, but it's just good to leave it under shade. It's just good to see it as to how it was developed, isn't it? And the whole idea behind it being making a space more inclusive. Now, I know, Julie, you spoke about it in your presentation. Sorry, should we give you guys 2 minutes?
Can I just try and mute it?
Go here, you can mute it.
It's so popular. Everyone's looking at it.
About that, guys.
Sorry, guys.
You think after a year we'd all be better at Zoom?
Yeah. Oh, we'll get there. Anyway, sorry. Coming back to where we were. So I'm going to start a few questions. Because Julie, you've done your presentation, and Sarah, you've done yours, and I'm going to share a few bits from my experience, and then of course you guys join in. But I've been studying about neurodiversity and inclusivity. When I say study, I've been listening to people, right? You go to these talks and you listen to them and think, oh yeah, I understand what that is. And I go for client presentations and I talk big about, oh yeah, you should make your space very inclusive, blah, blah. Come back to my own space. And Susie, you've seen our old office. And here I'm trying to work, and there are these sales guys loudly talking on their phone, walking around. And I hate noise. I can't concentrate. That's just me. But that's what made me realize that, oh, I talk big about inclusive design, but I'm in a space which isn't inclusive. You see, so that was kind of an eye opener. And I'm sure you all have at some point experienced something like that. Now, talking about these things here, we all gather together, have a glass of wine, talk about it, go home, forget. How are we really designing inclusive space? I want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, right? So, Julie, I'm going to throw this question to you. Like the biggest question is, how can one design for employees of all abilities in a workplace, right? A very tricky one. And I know you did kind of covered a little bit about how you use, biophilia and colors into the space, but then again, it's still a very overview of the whole thing. Do you want to tell us how we can design an inclusive space?
Well, this is definitely the $1 million question, right? But first of all, I think I will just reinforce what I've been saying earlier, is really the key is around variety and being able to have options and choices and getting some level of control about the spaces you choose to go into. I think that's really one of the key points, feeling empowered about this and feeling like if this doesn't work for me, I can make the decision and go somewhere else that would be supporting my activities better. But obviously, I know that's not the answer you're looking for here. You're looking into more detail in terms of design and strategies. I think it's also really important to consider what experience are you trying to create? What are you trying to do in terms of stimulating the senses? Obviously, we talked about distractions versus stimulation, but there are a lot of things that needs to be considered depending on the experience you want to craft for the users. So obviously there will be promotion of health and well-being, which we talked about, but something really important to consider is how to orientate and navigate in the space. A lot of people find it really challenging just finding their way in the space and not having maybe visual cues that will help them understanding better where they should go or what kind of spaces they would be finding at the end of corridor. So you can have the use of color using strategically, but you can also have easy navigation through wayfinding and signage. This is critical, creating memories and landmarks and something people can remember is also really important. And sometimes it's very unconscious, but it's been thoughtful as part of the design process. And it can really help the people who are maybe struggling in an environment which can be quite distracting. So repetition, clarity as well. If you want to minimize in some spaces clutter or activity, if it's too busy and there's too much going on, you might have people that find it too overwhelming. So you need to have this level of balance as well. It's not just we're creating one type of space, is we have to create these variety and the micro environment to support and be able for people to choose. And that's what I really like about the Colonnade collection, because you're giving power to the people to decide how they want to use it. And I'm sure the team who's been developing the products might find out there might be a lot of things the users are doing they might have not even thought about. And that's all the beauty of it. If you give people the power to control and decide what works best for them, then that's when magic can happen and you can have really interesting uses of spaces and experiences which you might have not thought about. But just one thing I wanted to add as well is it's not just design considerations, it would go beyond design. And it's really important to bear this in mind. So when you're meeting to organization and you're talking about inclusive design, a lot of their concerns or top of mind questions will be more around operational considerations or how people can adjust to the environment. So it's not just based on the design. And I think that's important to bear in mind as well.
True. No, I agree. I agree. It's not based just on design. And I think the whole point of making it a human-centric design would be, I guess, getting the users involved right from the beginning of the process. Maybe that's also a key to it, isn't it, Julie?
Yeah.
And of course, there are a lot of manufacturers nowadays coming out with a lot of products similar to Colonnade as well, isn't it? Trying to help us designers to design inclusive spaces. So, Sarah, a question for you here is, like a lot of focus is being placed on the well-being of the employee, especially now that we are returning to work. And that's what's given birth to this product as well, Colonnade. Do you see many clients giving importance to this sort of design? Do you get a lot of clients asking for this sort of a product, or are you going out there and educating your client?
I think that there's been a real shift in the last sort of 6 months on employers and certainly the clients that we work with being very being much more tuned to employee well-being. And I think it's because we've been through such a like a situation, and everybody's been challenged with their own mental well-being and mental health. And so I think that now employers are sort of saying, okay, this is something we need to address. Is it something we can address? Firstly, like, what can we do? And secondly, how can we do it? In Arcadis, we've done a lot of research in the past sort of 6 months around like sort of, I guess, health checks, and we've got a toolkit to sort of go out to our clients' employees and say, how are you feeling? And that's around home working and how they felt being at home, being in some cases isolated from their teams, you know, with tech or whatnot, how they feel coming back into the office, how they want to set up their hybrid week. So I think it's around employers need to firstly understand where their workforce is in on the spectrum, and that it will be a spectrum, you know, that there'll never be everybody saying we think this way. And then it's back to what Julie said, it's about providing choice. So if somebody's saying, I'm really nervous about coming back in and it's giving me anxiety, what tech can we give them to make sure that they can work from home maybe for a little bit longer? Is there a, you know, like a hybrid way of working like we're doing right now, where there's some people in and some people online? You know, is this working? If it is, great, then can we, you know, take that to our clients and say, well, actually, you know, if you've got the right meeting set up in your office, your team can work across locations. And, you know, it's okay to do that. And if that's going to relieve someone's anxiety, that's a good thing. So I think that we've only really just started to scratch the surface of where we are. But I do think that certainly what I've seen, I'd be interested to know what everyone else is seeing. My clients have certainly definitely put their noses up and said, okay, what's going on? We need to start thinking about this. And it started to trickle through into our projects and into our designs. Definitely.
And as we all coming back now, or sort of, and as clients are moving their staff back into their offices, all the more a reason to start looking at it more and more, isn't it? And I think I'll throw it out to the audience online and here both, as to have any of you, do you bring inclusivity as an initial discussion with your clients for your projects? Have you done that before, as to right from your first, second meeting with the clients? Do you bring that as a main topic of discussion to make them aware and to then be able to design something inclusive? Any strategy that has been put in place for designing? Anyone wants to share any examples? It's an open question. Gemma? You're hiding away, but I can still see you.
I definitely ask about the demographics of the people that work for a particular company, because as you say, everyone's so different, and I think that's why there's been reluctant to make changes, because where do they look for a precedent? Where do they look for what their results might look like? So everything has got to be bespoke. But what I've been thinking about more and more, especially recently, is even if you do learn about people's different personalities and what environments that they thrive in, that could change on a day by day, hour by hour, whether you're working on different tasks, what kind of people you're with. I mean, I can feel myself going red now, but if I was asking you this on the other end of that screen, I'd be absolutely fine. So it depends on, you know, the situation that you're in and where you're comfortable. So it's such a complex question, and the target's constantly moving. And I think the only way that you can address that in a space is to have these flexible elements and empower people to use them. And it's got to work with space, culture, communication. For example, it could be something as simple as a visual key. If, I don't know, say you're in that space and you don't want to be disturbed, then you just turn like a red or green counter over to say, Tasha's busy, don't disturb me.
Always be red. But
but it's, you know, it's making people aware and having an ambassador to keep people thinking about the surroundings of the people. We've got to change the way that we live as well as the space. And you know, it's not going to happen unless the two things are going to work together.
Yeah, true. And I think that's why it's important to start that discussion early on. But you're right, it keeps changing. So reviewing it from time to time is also important, isn't it? I remember about 10 years ago, if you talk about inclusive design, we would offer them 3 different sizes of chairs.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a tall guy working, this is the chair you need. If someone has a back problem, this is the chair you need. That was as inclusive as it could get. But of course, it's changed now. And you're right, it should be reviewed, maybe having an ambassador who keeps reviewing those things, giving more of these sort of products, which would make it more inclusive. But how many companies are doing this? How many of us are doing this sort of a thing is what my question is. Would anyone else like to share? How about CBRE doing?
So it's quite contradictory situation because on one hand we have clients saying, okay, we have magnific opportunity to reduce the space. People will not come to the office, will go 3 days per week only for meeting. If you have any concentration work to be done, you can stay at home and you can go to the office only for interaction and buzziness and vitality, etc. So the inclusivity conversation around being focused, disappeared at some point. And on the other hand, we have a conversation about the amount of space. So if we bring an assortment of options, absolutely this will be increase of the space. And some clients are quite focused on space reduction and space opportunity because they will increase, for instance, technology. So the mindset is, I will increase the technology opportunities, the quality, the speed, and the reliable setup, and I can reduce the space. I can make the space better. Better means more inclusive in terms of having many more options, but definitely smaller. If you reduce the space, one of the main, more important aspect of this consideration to others will be lost because you need more distance to be able to allocate the space, to be able to move around, to be able to produce some space for quietness, some space for buzziness, with distance enough to not be disturbed and to be interactive in reality. So this is one thing. And the other thing is the conversation around, if we are giving so many options to the employees, why should we keep the responsibility over their well-being? Really, actually, I had this conversation yesterday. I was like, okay, let's start again. And the approach is, okay, guys, we are delivering a great space. It's very good allocated. It's magnificent in terms of design. If you feel unwell, if you are stressed, if you would like to stay at home, you can stay at home. Therefore, the yoga class, everything that is related with your individual well-being is related with your individual option. So we can provide with access to the gyms. We can provide with discount for specific, massage and this kind of setups. But I don't need to consume my corporate space, which is quite expensive, in doing this. So it's also a challenging, position.
Yeah.
We need to educate them definitely, but we need to hear the concerns.
I agree. So it can't be one-sided. You're not just thinking about the end users, right? Obviously, prime location, prime property space, and the company themselves. So I guess there is something about balancing the both, isn't it? How do you do that? Like you said, investing more on maybe IT and technology, but reducing on the space, and how do we balance that? But that's a good point as well. You're right. I mean, what is the answer? I don't think anyone has a perfect answer, right? But whether we still have to start this discussion at the onset to at least educate. And that's my other question is, I don't know if Hannah or Julie or anyone online would like to answer this is, we have these conversations like we're having today, but we do need to do more for spreading the awareness about neurodiversity and inclusivity, isn't it? So that whether it's the clients or the wider society, any ideas on how else can that be done? Hannah, do you have?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in now. And you guys are all spot on. It's so important to make sure that everything's flexible. I think that's definitely kind of a common thread that coming into light, especially after this crazy year. But for us, we get involved in workshops with clients really early on. So we'll be having conversations about acoustics and about kind of other kind of requirements they need in their back to work strategies and everything. And in that, we're starting to have these D&I workshops as well. And it's been so insightful. So we'll get a group of people with varying kind of physical abilities and neurodiversities as well. And we've got some really, really cool insights from them. So it's little bits of info like for visually impaired people or people on crutches. Floor textures are quite key. So kind of differentiating spaces with different floor textures, but not making the contrast too much. It's turned out to be quite an interesting balance, and we're kind of doing tests with different carpets and how that journey works. For kind of visually impaired people, making sure that contrast on the wayfinding is key as well. So making sure that everything that they need to know is actually visible, looking at kind of detail on doors, whether they're just kind of free swinging. Lots of little key bits like that, but it's so important to kind of bring that conversation to the table. And I feel like loads of clients at the moment are really kind of pushing their D&I strategies. And for the clients who aren't bringing that to us, we're actually bringing that to them and saying, okay, guys, you should probably be thinking about this. And that's what people are expecting to see when they're looking for a new company to join. So it's a big loop, isn't it? But it's been so interesting. I think you said earlier on the last 6 months have been a bit of a game changer for this industry.
Sure, as more people are now aware, isn't it? You're right. And you're right, it's a loop, because the better your spaces, more people you get as new staff joining, but also to retain the staff that you have to get on board with all of this, and educating your client, I think, is the best way to start. Also educating ourselves. I know I read
definitely.
Lately, and I'll just read it out. Gensler sent out a report, I think was it last week, and the report says, now in a time when designers are using this moment to reimagine the future of spaces and places, we must take a closer look at how we are addressing the needs of people with varying abilities and re-examine the design responses created through complying with building codes and standards. Sounds good, but my question is following building codes and standards enough? Or do we need to create a new set of guidelines which designers can easily follow to create an inclusive workspace? Because building standards are like ADA standards, and which we've been following for years now. But is that enough? Julie, do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. There've been a lot of things around disabilities, but mainly around physical and visible disabilities. And I think the real challenge is for those invisible disabilities or conditions that people might not be familiar with. And as we said before, might not be even aware of them as well. So it would be probably good for designers to have some level of influence in terms of kind of the key requirements or principles that should be applied, or at least considered and thought through the design process. And I really like what you said, Hannah. I think the early stage engagement is absolutely critical, because that's something you could really tackle from the start. And as you go along the journey, then you can make the adjustments required. But if you've got the right foundations and the right understanding from the people you're designing for and some of the specific requirements that you might have to accommodate as well, I think that would be a great place to start.
And I think that also have a corporate conversation around inclusivity is an advantage for the company. So this conversation about Google creating specific space for autistic employees, because they will thrive in this space with high quality of lighting, proper acoustics. So almost highlight the opportunities for the companies in creating this setup or looking after this.
Yeah, changing that conversation and making it more positive for them, isn't it?
Definitely.
And the benefits for the organization.
For the business.
Yeah.
I think it's always about business, isn't it? Because unless you show them the money, so it makes sense.
But you're right. Attracting the talent and retaining the talent, as we say, is critical in on top of every leader's mind. So having more understanding and awareness around how to attract this new talent, especially if you're looking into really creative industries where innovation is at the forefront of what they do, there will be wonders that they could do if they had the right type of people also part of the organization and they understood better the makeup of their workforce as well.
I think as well, just being aware of what, like, so having that, the Google example, and being able to take benchmarking like that to our clients to say, this is what other people are doing. You know, you should think about this and what we can do with you, because what you don't want to be left behind, and retention and attraction of talent is key, of course. But having that knowledge ourselves, I guess, as well. Yeah. And knowing what's out there, which is always hard to stay on top of everything.
Yeah, that's what we do with WOD, isn't it? There you go. Sorry, I have to market a bit. What else? Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
And also, not being afraid of trying things. I think we are all in a situation where we are all worried about what tomorrow will look like, and we can't really plan for it. But I think something that's really beneficial as well is if you have an opportunity to do maybe pilots and trial, you know, for people with specific disabilities, or if you know the makeup of your workforce and you know you have some people, usually you have like employee resource groups that will be formed with part of this population, so they can represent and have a voice on behalf of these people. And they could be maybe the right people to really have this conversation with as well, so they know what they need. And then the design needs to support and meet with the needs rather than trying to meet the other way around, if that makes sense. So that could be another thing to do, and as designers, influencing in the right sense.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy to make assumptions and generalize, but it's like these key conversations that you have, you just get these little bits of info that completely change the direction that you go in. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, true. Need to keep talking. That's true. Well, I see we've got Melissa Fisher, who's from NYU, and she's a big time speaker on this topic. I don't know if, Melissa, you can hear us, but if you want to share something, because she does a lot of research on anthropology, cultural anthropology, and workplace anthropology, and she's a professor at New York University.
Hi, I apologize. I've been having to track between a work meeting and your meeting, so I just heard my name, but I didn't hear. I'm sort of double. This is what one can do in double Zoom. Maybe you can repeat the question, because I'm very interested in, obviously, as you mentioned, I'm a cultural anthropologist, and I write about, I've written a book about diversity, equity, and inclusion in finance, and I'm now involved in a research on thinking about how we can create more equitable, gender-sensitive workplaces. So I'm particularly interested in sort of learning more about neurodiversity.
Yeah, and I think Melissa, because you've done a lot of research for years with NYU, and you've been working on this topic. And you know what, A. Sargent, our guru on neurodiversity, always says this is a Kodak moment for designers to recreate, to reimagine, and to educate our clients, right? Melissa, I know you've been doing a lot of talks on this. Do you see a lot of people on the corporate side, the client side, talking about diversity and taking those baby steps towards it?
Well, that's a good question. First, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be organizing and moderating a panel that may be of great interest to people here on this call at NYU at the Institute for Public Knowledge, where we're going to talk directly about how to create more equitable, just socially justice kinds of workplaces. And I'll send you the information so that you can distribute it to everybody here. I think what we're hearing now is a range of different kinds of discussions. I think that the future of work and the idea of the hybrid workplace is becoming a dominant conversation, in which the idea is how to create, seamless ecosystems. And I think much less attention is being given to what happens to a diverse population, or how we really think about the people. What does it mean in terms of having difference, in terms of gender difference, neurodivergent difference, socioeconomic difference, class difference? I don't see a conversation as robust as I would like to. I think that, having now tracked discussions about diversity, equity, and inclusion for the last 3 decades in corporate and financial America and more globally, I think that the time is evolving, that we're having more kinds of conversations, but in the broader scheme of things, I just spoke to the reason why I've been tracking back and forth, and I really do apologize. I'm just, I was talking to an executive of a global corporate firm, specifically about my research. And I told him that the thrust of my interest is really looking at how I can help people to think about how to like recreate and design very new equitable kinds of aesthetic spaces, right? But the conversation veered into many different directions about what is impacting how that global real estate firm is thinking about the workplace, right? They're thinking about carbon footprints, sustainability is a huge issue, right? They're thinking about, you know, profitability. And so I think what's happening is that issues concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of weave into the conversation and then drop out of the conversation. I don't know what you all are feeling, but that is my sense. And I would be happy to think with you all collectively about how to bring these conversations more to the mainstream. And that's not, so I just want to be clear, it's not that the conversation is not there. I think that there are a set of competing agendas in the current work environment. I mean, we're in a capitalist society. People are concerned about carbon footprints. People are concerned about sort of rental space. So I think what we need to do, and this is what I teach at SEPA, is how do we effectively mainstream issues about DEI into every kind of conversation that's taking place. So I think that as sort of something, and I would be delighted to work with people about how you can sort of, you know, as I give talks in different spaces, I'll just finish here. Yesterday, I gave a talk in a webinar for an hour. Many questions were asked, but I didn't get a lot of questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I should, in theory, be the person that they should be asking, right? So it needs ebb and flow.
I'm just hoping, Melissa, that we keep talking about it, we keep banging on it, and we'll get there someday, isn't it? As companies like CBRE, if they struggle to talk to their clients about it, who are we? So I think, yeah, we just keep having these conversations. Melissa, and if you could keep sharing. Sorry, I picked on you because I saw your name there, and we were not supposed to be on this call, but thank you for sharing your thoughts, Melissa. I mean, if anyone else has anything else to say, if not, my drinks are calling and to go for a glass of wine. It's been a heavy conversation. Does anyone want to share anything at all? No?
I don't think that we need to continue the conversation.
Yes.
So I don't think that we should stop now, and we should continue just seeking the void. And eventually the clients will come to this. So once this coming back to the office, craziness pass, the conversation about the next step definitely will be related with much more inclusive environment.
I think as well, I think when you raise it as well, it has to be a pretty cold person to say, I just don't want anything to do with any of that.
It's given what we've been through.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a much easier conversation. Because
I have something to add to that, because I don't know if you talked about it, but I mean, the thing is that, you know, one of the ways in which people began to pay attention to gender issues and diversity on Wall Street was, of course, that they made a business case, right? So, I mean, some of this is always about, and you know, for better and for worse, right? I mean, you know, suddenly people were able to show data that, you know, if you had more women at the in a corporate board, that you could really directly show a correlation between that and profitability. So, I mean, I guess the issue at hand in part is to think about how do you construct certain kinds of arguments and narratives about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So that you mix and marry, you know, the ways in which capitalism works effectively or business works. And so that and I think that's very possible right now. I actually think that there is an opening. I know I was just a little bit negative about the conversation waning in and out, but I think it's because the conversation that we need to have about diversity, equity, and inclusion needs to link into what are the topics of concern to businesses and industry, right? And so how can we sort of make, and I say that in part because I'm working very closely this week with the W20, that's the Women's 20 that advises the G20 countries on issues about gender and diversity and inclusion. And one of the things that we're working very actively to do is to figure out how the largely white male leadership in these G20 countries, not all, especially the finance ministers. What do they talk about? How do they talk about it? And how can we bring the language of gender and equity into the conversation? In other words, how do we like see how they talk about it, right? You know, how do they construct their arguments? And instead of just creating our own documents and preaching to the choir internally, how can we sort of intersect with their
it's about telling them as to how you bring that conversation to the table and how you make it sound like it's commercially right as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's still a long way to go. We know that, but I guess we all are talking about it. We all are working towards it, and I guess that's a good start. That's a very good start, I guess. Let's all stay positive. But so thank you guys for joining in. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks
for presenting, and the rest of our audience online. Thank you guys for joining in. We will continue the conversation. We're doing the Clerkenwell Open. If you guys can come in September, that'll be a great time to talk about sustainability and the D&I issue board. So yeah, keep an eye out on WOD and we'll keep talking. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you for joining in.
Thank everyone and keep the conversation going.
Thanks guys. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.